a lot of people turn a blind eye heavily to foreign policy when they scrutinize the immigration or they scrutinize the way that things are divvied up in society.
Okay. Can I ask your opinion on the Rwanda?
Sorry, George.
No. They often forget the causality, the things that make these situations. They kind of don't take that into consideration, which is poor political science. But yeah, go for it.
George, 2,100, because someone's asked, you made a comment about, I think you said that Muslims will become the majority. And there's some other concerning thing that you mentioned, that you said black people, I think you said white people will be wiped out or something along those lines. And perhaps
white people will be 30% block, but they won't have like leverage or a majority control anymore. And then neither will any ethnic group, by the looks of it. If you project it out, you'll have a block of Pakistani people, a block of Hindu people, Indian people. But the one group, if you add it all up, that will have the majority political power will be Muslims, because as we all know, Muslims don't identify by their ethnic group like everyone else. They identify by their religion. So they'll want Muslim policies, they'll want Sharia this, they'll want Sharia that, and then as a group of black people,
what power would they have?
You sound like you're coming from the Tommy Robinson textbook.
Hold on.
I'm just playing it out. I'm not even making a moral judgment.
What power are you affording this bigger group of Muslims that they don't have now?
Well, the more power. So, for example, the way our system is set up, right, we do have a representative democracy, which is a bit of a sham, obviously. But if you can get enough MPs and enough seats, you can change policy. It's happened before, and it can definitely happen again. So, enough Muslims have enough population.
If these Muslims are all living in certain areas, like, they're not likely to get that many MPs, are they? Because if they're all living in Bradford, for example, they'll get one MP.
It totally depends how much people want to, like, for example,
you're making out, George, that the increase in number of Muslims is going to equal an increase in power. But I'm saying is, if they're still living in the same areas they're living in now, they're not going to have any extra MPs.
True, facts. But I'm assuming expansion, obviously. I'm assuming
exactly, but you're talking to people who know what they're talking about.
No, but that's based on data too. If you ask Tommy, for example, he'll tell you that famous anecdote of, like, when I was born in Luton, there was one mosque, and then no, there's 50 mosques. Right? He's not fucking wrong, is he? He's not fucking wrong. So it's like, that's what happens. We're talking about, they move into a place, they breed well,
let me ask you
compared
about
to other groups. They outbreed the local groups.
When we're talking about predominantly black areas, and you're talking about white flight, there weren't no Tommy Robinson going, oh, we don't want this happening. There's a patty shop on every corner. You're not getting that. But why is it with Muslims that it was allowed to? Why is it
around World War II?
Why?
And we had that with Enoch Powell in, like, the 60s. But you're right. By the time the 90s came around, it had been settled in culture that we fought a war against Nazism, we fought a war against racial purity, we fought a war against all these ideas.
What I'm saying is, if Tommy Robinson's so aggrieved at what's going on in Luton, why don't you do what normal white people do and just fucking move?
Because he's poor, or at least was, right? Before most of his money, my understanding is most of his money was made in, like, the beauty industry. He owns a bunch of cosmetic and tan bedding shops in Luton and Hertfordshire and places like that, right? So, but before he got rich doing the business and doing his activism and stuff and his grifting, he was a regular working class bloke in Luton. That much can't really.
But he's saying him and his missus owned 7 houses before all this happened.
Well, you say before this happened, I believe he was, like, in his 30s, right? In late 30s when he started really getting into the campaigning and stuff. So I think there's probably some discrepancies in the way he tells the story. I'm certainly not his lawyer, do you know what I mean? But all I'm saying is, when he tells you that Luton, the face of Luton changed during his lifetime, he's not exactly lying. He's telling the truth. Like, Luton would have looked radically different.
My point to you is this: in a tolerant British society, shouldn't Muslims be able to live how they want to live in their own little group? Let's say in Bradford, for example, like, all right, a few people from Bradford have to move to fucking Leicester or wherever, but apart from that, it's nothing that's never happened before. Like, why can't those people have their little
Muslims
town?
in Bradford
Why is it a problem?
If there's groups of Muslims in Bradford who want to genitally mutilate their female children, for example, do you think we should tolerate that?
What do you mean? Like, you've immediately gone from Muslims having their own town.
Of course, I'm going to an extreme for a point. It's a rhetorical point, right? I'm saying, of course, tolerance is good, but of course, tolerance has its limits. And of course, tolerance has its extent where you've reached maximum tolerance. And I'm asking, I don't know where that line is. I'm not the king of the world.
Why?
No, I'm not even saying we have. I don't know where that line is. But you know, at a certain point, you're going to have to draw the line. So I'm saying, like, tolerance and freedom is great, but mass numbers change as a society. So, and look, I'm not even necessarily even saying that's bad. I think it's inevitable. But I'm asking, like, the black people how they feel about it. Really, that was all.
George, you've already said it's bad. Like, you've said that we've reached the threshold, and I can concur. On
I
some
personally
stuff.
think it's bad, but like, if I zoom out, it's like saying to me, what do you think about the Roman Empire falling in like 2000? If I zoom out, like, historically,
but that is something of significance. What you're mentioning here, an increase in the population of Muslims, you're falsely equating that to them having more power, and somehow that's influencing the lives of black people. Like, this is all some made up mythological future that
of course
you've
it's going to influence
built up.
black people.
But
Of course,
it will
asking black people
everybody.
what they feel about that, right?
What's that?
It will influence
He's
everybody.
asking you what you feel about it.
Yeah, I feel it's a negative.
But really, it don't make no difference to you, does it?
Of course, it makes a difference.
But all right, look, let me ask you a question, thingy, Reggie. If the Danes invaded Scotland and took over Scotland tomorrow, right, and set up shop there and changed it to Daneland, how would it make any difference to us living in London?
We're talking about another country.
It wouldn't make any difference at all. Like, you do not live in Bradford. There's hardly any black people living amongst these Muslim communities. All right, in Luton, you could say there's a fair amount of black people, but you know what I mean?
What about just in London? What about just in London, though? What about places like Whitechapel and Aldgate that used to be parts of the city?
Those people don't have enough population to make a difference to the voting system.
But where do you think they move when they have children?
What do you mean? That I'm saying to you,
they come here. They presumably they find wives. They have babies. They reproduce. We already discussed.
Spreading mischief in the land.
I think I've effectively made my point, which is your argument's nonsense, and it doesn't actually, thanks to what Jedi said, make a difference to black people one way or the other, whether they stay or whether they leave this country. The amount of Muslims ain't affecting black people.
Of course it is. Of course it's affecting black people.
I think many black people may choose to become Muslim. I don't know what you mean. I think that's quite possible.
It spreads confusion. It makes Muslims like respect, that are confused. Like, you know what I mean? It means that there's a lot of people that go into jail and converting in jail because they're scared for their life. As you know, there's a quite a representation of black people in jail as well. So let me put
this point to you, and in 100 years you can remember this. Muslims are smarter than what you give them credit for. They will not put their heads above the fence. They will not try to break through the glass ceiling, because if you look at the teachings of Islam, it is not about taking over the country where you're living, which is the purported myth that we're now talking about. Muslims are known for staying under the radar, keeping their heads down, and in a local level, living how they want to live. They have no aspirations greater than that. And that's the mistake you're making. You're saying that the
land. Wasn't your land? What, brother?
Listen to what I'm saying to you. Listen to what I'm saying to you. Muslims have the understanding of Darul Islam, which is their own countries where if they want to, at any point, they can go and live there quite freely. Yeah. And our countries to you might seem like third world shitholes, but to us, that land is blessed with the blood of our ancestors who died as shaheeds. Yeah. We will never give up that land. Right. And that's special to us. That's our special land, right? So we're not going to try and make England into a Muslim country. That's not what's going on.
Well, you should tell that to your ancestors that were forced to convert from from Turkey into or Constantinople.
Can we just can we have a serious conversation?
Serious, bro. Your country,
distraction point there. What I'm saying is that George, let's not forget who he is, what he's doing here, and what he's purporting, and it's all based on a certain point of view, which I personally have come on to put the other side to. So I'm now saying the opposite of what he's saying, and I feel that I've made my point. George, you want to say anything before I go?
No, not at all. You made your point. You made it well. Obviously, I disagree, but I think in general,
it's very interesting
you're basically saying that the religious system of a country changing from what it is now, which is basically liberal, secular atheism, weak Christianity, to Islam, which will probably be a weak secular form of Islam, but you're saying that big transition over a period of 100 years isn't going to affect like black people, and obviously I just disagree with that. Like I'm seeing it affect black people already, so I don't know
How?
what
Go
you're
on,
saying.
well, give us examples then. Because
Okay, I've got a
Of course
friend
it
right
affects
now I've got a friend right now in America who just got out of prison. You might know that the Muslim
can we not
population
just
in
keep
America,
it to UK-based things?
no, but it's even more of a brilliant example because, as you might know, the Muslim population in America is tiny, right? There is one big enclave of Muslims in America in a state called Michigan, in a place called Dearborn in Detroit, right? Outside of that, there are no Muslims in America. I have a friend who just got out of prison in
Alhamdulillah.
Florida. I have a friend who just got out of prison in Florida, and he's gone to a halfway house full of like white people, black people, drug addicts of all kinds. Like it's a halfway house out of prison,
Sounds
and
like
there's a bunch
hell.
of Muslim black guys praying